Capital One has always been asking the question, what's in your wallet? But have you ever wondered what's in their Capital One cafes and headquarters? Located in McLean, Virginia, which is coincidentally located in the same county as the CIA, or Central Intelligence Agency. But you didn't hear that from me. How's everyone doing? It's Cal Being here, bringing you another video to help you make the right choices. So today we'll be going to and talking about 4 major Capital One themed areas in the Washington DC area. Capital One cafes, Capital One Arena, Capital One's headquarters, and the Capital One Lounge at Dulles Airport. Plus a bonus at the end, so stay tuned. Something a little different than the videos I normally upload on this channel, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm starting with food because food, but alas, I'm not some sort of magic transporting fairy, unfortunately. So we're going to have to take the metro or subway to Chinatown, which is where our first target is located, the Capital One Cafe. And if you use the exit to Chinatown on the intersection of 7th and H Street, it will literally be in front of your face. You can't miss it. And this amazing Chinatown Friendship Archway will be behind you. The unique thing about the Capital One Cafe in Chinatown is that there's Chinese lettering on the outside, which stands true to most of the buildings in DC's Chinatown. Basically regular chain companies with Chinese lettering. Other than that, the Capital One Cafe looks like any normal building. Wouldn't outright think this would be a bank, and inside is no different. Doesn't scream bank. Actually looks like a coffee shop, which is the vibe Capital One is trying to achieve with these cafes. A welcoming place that happens to be a bank. But I'm not saying it's not a coffee shop because you can totally get coffees and snacks here, because Capital One partnered with Peet's Coffee to serve beverages and food here, which is like a Starbucks but a way smaller chain. However, honestly, I like the taste of Peet's more. To order, the coffee shop is located in the back corner of the building, while online there's Peet's Coffee merch you can buy and bag snacks if you didn't want a pastry. Then if you look away long enough from the snacks, towards the top left is a sign explaining what Capital One plans to achieve with their cafes, from their own mouth. And next to that sign on the right is the real reason why you should come to a Capital One cafe. As a Capital One card member, you'll get 50% off your drink. Now that's a good deal. Way better than getting 3% back on dining. I ordered a brown sugar oat matcha latte with jelly, and my wife ordered a brown sugar oat latte cold brew with jelly. After we got out of line, there was another table of merch. Honestly, I wanted to buy this cup. So cool. While waiting for our order, we took a look around. There are so many tables and comfortable looking chairs. Honestly, it looked like some people have been there for hours, and I can't blame them. It's almost like staying at an airport lounge. And as the bank they are, above the straws and sugar and junk like that was this sign trying to sell you checking account services, saving account, credit cards, and overall why Capital One is the best. Finally, we got our drinks, and just look at these suckers. Look so good, and they taste as good as they look. My drink, the iced matcha, tasted really similar to bubble tea actually. My wife said her drink also tasted like bubble tea, but he added cold brew to it. Overall, already very satisfied. Just a funny thing I noticed, next to the table we sat at, across was umbrellas you could borrow. Unfortunately, it wasn't raining. But also you notice on the tag, if you bring the umbrella back, you get a free coffee. Very nice. After we were done with our drinks, we went exploring. In the back here looks like study private rooms anyone can use. And from the outside of those rooms were more tables and chairs you could use. In the very back corner looked like a banking room, so you needed to talk privately with someone at Capital One to open a new account or card or something like that. Along the wall was a giant advertisement screen. Next to that, on the other side of the room was a meeting room. And finally, when I walked back to the coffee station side was 2 Capital One ATMs. Very cool experience. But you thought that was nice? Let me tell you, this was the worst out of all 3 Capital One cafes I visited. But before we get to that, let me show you the Capital One Arena, which is across the street from the Chinatown Capital One Cafe. Nothing too special, just like any other sports stadium or event venue, just with gigantic Capital One lettering across every side of it, along with what I told you earlier, Chinese lettering on some of the signs. And if you walk to this side of the arena, this is where your Capital One perks really shine. A Capital One members only entrance, so you can enter earlier than everyone else, probably a shorter line compared to the main entrance, since the general public is so terrified of credit cards. But let's head back to the metro to our next location. Saw this in New York. If you haven't seen it, it's a really good show. Banksy, the Capital One Cafe in Georgetown. Now this was a pretty cool location. If you ever come or live in DC, you have to come check this out. Oh yeah, U-turns are legal here. Coming from the Midwest, crazy to see and get used to. But welcome to the Capital One Cafe in Georgetown DC. Now this place was packed. I didn't realize until I looked at my receipt from back in Chinatown, our total was $2.20 for our drinks. It was because Capital One One cafes were doing a deal where every Friday to Sunday in July and August, every handcrafted drink was $1. It didn't matter if you had a Capital One card or not. Every drink that wasn't bottled was $1. And no, the 50% off didn't apply to the already cheap drinks, in case you were wondering. While waiting in line, some cool touches and details to remind you were still at a Capital One bank that happens to have a Pete's in it. And of course merch. For Pete's, not Capital One unfortunately. However, funny enough, during this first week they opened this Capital One cafe location, I grabbed a merch bag. Love this Capital One bottle, use it every day. At the end of the line, I saw this calendar of events they had. Had no clue what it means. I assume someone does, or you would just show up and see what was happening. Way more snacks at this location. Finally, after waiting in that long line, it was our turn. I ordered the same thing as I got back in Chinatown. It was so good. And my wife ordered a yuzu citrus black tea shaker. Next to the waiting area for the drinks, there was a little desk and a Capital One representative you could ask questions to about their products, or they will guide you back to a room if you want to open a new account. And finally, our drinks. Took at least 20 minutes, or at least felt like that. So many people. But before I tell you how good the drinks were, let me show you around. After leaving the coffee area, you are greeted by the sign that points you in the direction of all their amenities. So first, let's go down to the community space. Basically a big open space, kinda like a college campus or that one room at Google. It's cool, but nothing too special. When heading back up, you are greeted by the same sign we saw at Chinatown. An elevator for the 3 floors in this building. Carpe save 'em. When you walk to the opposite side of the coffee area are meeting rooms. I noticed some of the rooms were used by regular people who just wanted their own room. Some others were used by bankers and customers. Nice wall art across from the rooms. Next to the private rooms were 2 ATMs and a different entrance door. When circling back on the left, this is where all your sugars and straws are. And on the right is bar stool seating. Now when we go up, if you notice, there's phrases and sentences written on the steps. I think the upper floor is the nicest out of this entire building. Lots of seating, lots of windows, very cool lights. I chose to sit right in front of the street sign, M Street, where the Capital One Cafe is located. Don't know what Joe Pacell Square is though. And around me was all these seating areas and private rooms you could use. I'll show you around more in a bit. So my drink was just as good as the Chinatown location. Don't know what happened to all my photos of it. And my wife's yuzu drink, so good. If you haven't had yuzu, it's like if a pear and an orange had a baby, kind of. You just gotta try it. And now you know where you can. After you're finished, you can then use these Capital One napkins to clean up. So on the second floor, you got this couch area, then the private rooms I was talking about, a little nook area, bathrooms. In case you want to look inside, my wife thought it was cute. Then of course the stairs back down to where we came from. Next, we're going to take the circulatory, which is DC's basically tourist bus line. Usually it's free or just $1 a ride, to the closest metro station, Roslyn. Because Georgetown doesn't have a metro station. Watergate, the Roslyn station has some of the longest escalators. Of course not the longest, because that title belongs to another DC metro station at Easton Station. So we'll be leaving DC and heading to Virginia, to the last 2 places I'll be talking about. Capital One's headquarters and Dulles Airport's Capital One Lounge. And trust me, you can't miss the Capital One headquarters when you're riding the metro. The metro stop we'll be getting off at is the McLean stop. It's a little walk from the metro station, but not too bad. And voila, welcome to Capital One. You gotta see this. One of my favorite things about this area is how all the roads are named after Capital One. Just funny to hear your GPS say turn right on Capital One, drive south. I don't know, maybe that's just me. As you can see, this area isn't finished yet, but they plan on putting more stores, restaurants, and retail stores. A similar concept to the Capital One cafes. Try to make a bank a more inviting place you want to be at. The most exciting announced opening is Sister's Thai. I've been to the one in Alexandria, Virginia, and they got excellent food, better desserts, even cute. Their menus are newspapers. If you ever visit, you gotta eat there. So this whole area they are calling the Capital One Center. Not too imaginative, but gets the point across. So when you walk a little further down, on the right is Capital One Hall, which is pretty amazing. Basically a Broadway type theater with Capital One's name slapped in the front. Funny enough, I actually got a mail flyer from them not too long ago. Beautiful building, and even nicer inside. On the opposite side, I believe is more offices they are planning on finishing. Honestly, would have been awesome if it was a giant high-rise apartment building in my opinion. Would make this whole area into a giant village, which is a style I prefer. However, nearby there are apartment complexes you can live at, so not bad. And I heard they are planning on building a residential area soon. No actual physical building yet though. Walk a little more further down is the main event, the Capital One headquarters, which is really an amazing building. It's located on the intersection between Capital One Tower Road and Capital One Drive North. Funny story, my wife almost worked for Capital One, but the place she is working at now offered a W-2 role. At Capital One, it was a contractor role, and the place she is working at now paid her more and is fully remote. I believe the Capital One role was a hybrid role. It has glass everywhere to let more natural light in. They designed the space to allow employees to move about, so it makes it feel like your office space is more flexible and encourages collaboration, but also have the inclusion of private spaces to have a place to focus. They also have an outdoor area, cafeterias on site, and coffee coffee shops, which surprisingly is a Starbucks and an Illy's, but not a Pete's. At least I couldn't find information on it. They also got a basketball court, I read, somewhere in the building. For sure they got a fitness area. Very nice. Their lobby area is huge, super tall ceilings, with this wavy thing outside the entrance to shield you from the rain. There's also this random shop on the right, no clue what it is. And if you step back a little bit, you can see Capital One's landscape patch along with their sign, Virginia's state flag, the American flag, and Capital One's flag. And step back even further, an interesting artwork sculpture. Have no clue what it's supposed to represent or make me feel. Happy, sad, mad. How does this artwork make you feel? Now let me show you my favorite spot out of the entire Capital One Center. Start walking left from the Capital One headquarters and you'll find the secret park, or at least it feels hidden away with all the gigantic buildings surrounding it. There's so many trees and grass, tables and chairs, just in general a bunch of places to sit at, along with these cube structures. Don't know if they're supposed to do something or just look nice, because they do. And of course, a water fountain for good measure. Meet my friends Tony and Mikey, very thirsty birds. Oh, also I have no clue what these buildings are supposed to be. If you know, let me know in the comments. Oh, also from this side you have a better view of Capital One's logos on both buildings. Now you walk even further to the left, basically to a dead end roundabout. There's another office building way smaller and looks older than the glass building we saw earlier. Not sure what this is though. Now let's walk back to the right side because I haven't shown you the neatest area of the Capital One Center. Back at the Capital One headquarters across the street is a place called The Perch, basically a rooftop outdoor park. It's open to the public. There's food trucks up there, a mini golf course, a bar where you can get your drinks when you're playing mini golf. I tried to book a spot, but the mini golf course was booked out for every weekend for the next 3 months. That's another thing. If you ever come to visit DC in general, always make reservations. However, I was able to get into the hotel and a restaurant that was inside the hotel, but I'll tell you more about that in a bit. Oh, and quick side tangent, if you notice on the sidewalks there are bolts in the ground with the Capital One logo. Very nice detail. But the next place is the place I actually wanted to take you. On the main street where most of the cars will come from are 2 signs located at Capital One Drive South. A beautiful sign to showcase the Capital One Hall, and the second is a tourist spot with shrubbery spelling Capital One Center. I very much enjoyed it. And behind the Capital One sign you may have noticed the Wedgman's grocery store. Basically on par with Whole Foods, sometimes believe it or not more expensive than Whole Foods. And out of all the Wedgmans I visited, this is the largest and nicest in my opinion. All the Wedgmans got this little train running around in it. Capital One Hall classrooms. Wonder what they do in there. And what I really wanted to show you. The hotel and restaurant. The hotel is called the Watermark Hotel. Not sure if it's owned by Capital One or anything. I don't think so. It's a really nice hotel. I would really want to stay a night here. And the restaurant is called Ren. It's a Japanese style restaurant with amazing drinks. This one is called the Incredibly Calm Hulk, which tasted like a sweet matcha drink with a hint of sour citrusy from the yuzu and the alcohol. This one is called the Ren's Concoction. It tasted very strong cinnamony and cranberry. Would be an excellent holiday drink or a drink that reminds you of a vacation. Sorta looks like a vacation, doesn't it? Here's the list of drinks in their menu if you would like to take a quick peek. Honestly, in my opinion, I would order an appetizer and drinks. Their food is good, but not as special or as good as their drinks. We tried the Tokyo chicken, it's good. Not the best I've had, but also not the worst. Almost tasted like a better version of General Tso's chicken. And for the entrees, my wife got the country miso ramen and I got the Wagyu burger. Like I said, it was good, but not the best I've had. The ramen was cooked nice and the noodles tasted handmade. The soup was a little salty and kinda plain. But if you've never been spoiled by Jinya's Ramen on 14th Street or Michiko in Columbus, you'll probably like this. And for the Wagyu burger, the fries tasted nice and crispy with a hint of spicy seasoning. The Wagyu burger itself was cooked perfectly, nice and medium, almost melted in your mouth every time you took a bite, with a little crunch to it with the onions, topped off with a very fluffy bun. It was definitely good, and I know this might be trashy to say, but I actually preferred the CEO burger at BurgerFi more. But of course that is my preference. You might could try this burger and think, Calbee is insane, this is the best damn burger I've had. And you're probably right. And to finish off this meal, how else should I pay if not using our Capital One cards against this cold marble table? Receipt given in this nice leather wallet looking thing. Actually surprised I didn't get a discount when using my Capital One card. Like how at Hudson Yards in New York, they give specials to people who use Visa cards. But I digress. Let's head back to the metro station. Love these walkway bridges. So I didn't actually go to the Capital One Lounge in Dulles because it doesn't exist yet, but the plan is to actually open one by sometime next year. It got delayed. Apparently they wanted to add more to-go options since the lounge is pretty far away from any gates. The lounge will be located near the security checkpoint. Actually surprised they didn't build the lounge in the DC area first since their headquarters are located here. So anyone can get in if you're willing to pay $65 per person. For Venture and Spark Mile card holders though, you'll get 2 free visits per year with each other visit costing $45. But then if you have the top tier Capital One card, the Venture X, you can visit any Capital One lounge whenever you want. I also assume the Capital One lounge in Dulles would look similar to the one they built in Dallas-Fort Worth. Relaxation rooms, exercise rooms, showers, high-speed Wi-Fi, free food and drinks, tons of nice seating, and a cocktail bar. You know, things we come to expect at a credit card airport lounge. So subscribe so you'll be the first to know when that video drops when they finally open the lounge in Dulles. And that was everything Capital One themed I knew about in the Washington DC area. However, I'm not going to leave you hanging. How about a bonus experience for you? Does that sound nice? I also visited the Capital One Cafe in Columbus, Ohio, when I was visiting some friends there, and I happened to notice a new Capital One Cafe in Easton, which is an enormous mall with outdoor and indoor sections. It was located in the indoor part where the Microsoft store used to be at, and this is probably my favorite Capital One Cafe location I've been to. It was nearly empty, but funny enough, outside the Capital One Cafe, people were overflowing the seating area Capital One provided out there. It's because of the culture in the Midwest, people are terrified of credit cards and banks. I feel like they thought if they sat in the Capital One Cafe, that either they weren't allowed to, or Capital One would somehow siphon their money if they sat down. Compared to the locations in DC, when I overheard some conversations, they talked like Capital One owed them money for their $1 drink somehow. A funny conversation I overheard in DC was someone railing on their friend for not transferring their Capital One points. Instead, they cashed their points out on gift cards. Funniest thing I've witnessed to this day as far as credit card comedy goes. Lucky enough, when I visited the Capital One Cafe in Columbus, it was the last Saturday in August. So me, my wife, and my friend all got large $1 drinks. The coffee shop was in the center of the room, taking up actually the majority of the space. Of course, you already know what I got. The brown sugar oat iced matcha latte. There was so much free empty space. I felt like I hit the jackpot. The bathroom was in the back corner, a private room next to the bathrooms, and another private room along the back wall with a little nook area. Next to the private rooms that's next to the bathroom was an ATM, with another ATM located at the front. Then along that wall was the most comfortable sofas and chairs. Towards the front was more bar type seating. And that guy sitting on the counter would be your Capital One banker. Nice guy. He pointed to where we could pick up free pins if we wanted to, which we did. Don't ever pass up on free swag. I picked up the suitcase pin and my wife picked up the movie ticket pin. At first she picked up the piggy bank pin. They were all free. She could have picked up both, but I think she felt bad taking more than what she needed. There was a little display wheel of all the pins. Sucks it didn't spin. I just had the urge to try and spin it. Oh, and I didn't notice until I got back home. On the back was recommendations of credit cards based on the pin you've chosen. I was recommended the Venture card, surprised it wasn't the Venture X card, way better card. And my wife was recommended the Safer One card. Very nice experience. So what do you think of these Capital One experiences? Does Capital One actually seem like a bank that cares about you and your well-being? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video and haven't already, consider subscribing. And thanks for reaching to this point of the video. Here's a clip of my cat Cindy sniffing my Capital One bottle, and I'll see you later.